My name is Paul Williams, and I am the very youthful and young and newbie director of Project for Pride in Living, a whopping 9 weeks into my service. Like David, there are some fantastic folks who actually really run things at PPL, and particularly in this arena where I think we're doing some really exciting work. Mei Zhang at the table back there, Julie Brecky, both have been really key to making our to really pushing our work in employment and training. One of the things, as some of you who know me know, I tend to be a little bit impatient and really have a sense of urgency around these issues of racial equity and want to push the conversation to what are we actually doing about it. And as I looked at this opportunity at PPL, which as many of you know, PPL does a lot of work in affordable housing, in social services, youth development, in education. We run a couple of alternative high schools, childcare programs. But the thing that most excited me about this organization was the work that we're doing around employment and training, and particularly the way in which we are doing that work. We serve some 13,000 folks a year. About 85% of the folks that we work with are folks of color. And so we do a lot of different work, but this approach that we've been working on, which is really kind of a customized partnership with employers, focused on placing folks and kind of pursuing a non-traditional track to get that done is part of what I think is so exciting about that work. So I'm just going to touch on 4 different slides here. I know those of you in the back can't quite read the words here. I'm not going to read it. We really created a partnership with Hennepin County and MCTC called the Human Services Pathway Program. And it's a pilot program. We've been at it, I think, for just about over a year now. It's the 4th of the career pathways programs that we've been exploring and building out for some time. It really focuses on kind of customized credit programs where PPL works to use existing credits, credit-bearing courses at the community college. So I love the fact that Century was presenting here, because I think community colleges are one of those community institutions that we need to think much more creatively and aggressively about as part of creating these pathways and as one of the vehicles and institutions that can help us actually start to make a even bigger dent in this problem. Graduates are prepared for entry-level positions that require some post-secondary education, and in particular, get them into a career laddering program. So I think your point about how this isn't necessarily, not everybody has to come with a 4-year degree. Part of what we're talking about is what are some practical skills in some industries that are continuing to be critical, and I would argue that government is an industry. We were just talking at the table here, I think Hennepin County, Dave, you said, is the 4th largest employer in Minneapolis, and I'm guessing, I think it's the state of Minnesota is perhaps the largest employer in the state, actually. So when you start adding up, and my previous work in St. Paul as deputy mayor, we had 3,000 employees. So these are big institutions, and Peter McLaughlin talks very convincingly about how historically a lot of families, a lot of mainstream families used government as a career, as an opportunity, that patronage system. My dad was a firefighter, and I'm a firefighter. You know, my folks worked in the sewer utility, and I worked in the sewer, and it's a working class wage. It's a good paying job on a variety of fronts, and I think we need to think about government as one of those continuing strong resources for employment, even as government continues to scale back and really not necessarily be in a growth mode. So PPL's role really is around student recruitment, support services, orchestration of kind of internships, which is kind of a key component of our model, job placement, job retention. I love the term that you used around family. I think that's part of what we do is we create a sense of family. We create a sense of family support as people are getting trained, as they're getting placed, and then again after they get retained. And that's part of what I think makes for some of the success that we've had. Just a history of our employment work. PPL's been at this for about 16 years now. I have to give great credit not only to the staff that's been with us for a long time, but certainly my predecessor, Steve Kramer, who was a very ambitious and thoughtful and provocative thinker in terms of really bringing these issues to the forefront and building this out. We've worked with over 1,400 folks over the years. About 2/3 of those folks have actually been placed. And again, part of the emphasis here is really on creating that employer-recognized certification. So that's been part of what we've been doing this in financial services and banking. We've been doing this in healthcare. We've been doing this now in government. We've been building out a pharmacy tech certification that MCTC has now just, I think, rolled into their normal coursework. So again, it's this whole notion of finding these growth industries, finding these key industries, using our access because we are in the community. We have been in the community for 40 years, using that access as a pathway to get into these jobs and then thinking about how we do that. Our success in providing culturally competent training, cultural competence matters. About half of our staff are folks of color that do this work, and upwards of 2/3 of our employees specifically in the human services pathway are folks of color. Overall, I think about 75% of our participants are of color. So part of what distinguishes this particular work, human services training, from our broader work really is it's about cross-sector innovations. This notion, PPL really is a little bit of a facilitator, bringing the community college in, bringing the employer in, paying attention to what the employer is looking for, adding kind of part of our expertise is around different kinds of curriculum. We actually are curriculum designers along with the community college and figuring out, tailored to this particular pathway, in this case tailored to this human service representative, what specifically does that employer need and how do we train to that in a shorter, more compact period than a normal 2-year associate degree and or a 4-year degree. And really that is the trick of it. We combine a combination of MCTC coursework with PPL's content. We collaborate. We have some non-traditional approaches to teaching. We actually use adult education folks from the Minneapolis Public Schools along with the community college faculty to kind of, again, really think about how do you generate support and educate adults and non-traditional learners in some different ways. Last slide is really just about some of the lessons and early successes. We've really, again, 76% of our overall students in our job training programs are people of color, about 2/3 in this particular program. I think our first cohort is about 30 plus students. Am I right about that? And again, that combination of customized support services before, during, and after the placement is part of what's the key there. Our course completion rates currently running between 80 and 90%. So we're having some real success there. And I think this point here towards the bottom about our reputation as an agile, trusted employer, we are an access point. And part of the point that I want to make here is community organizations, and there are many of you here who do key work. You are an access point for communities to access these systems. And without those, going into and I would argue community colleges actually are an access point. MCTC has a tremendous history and a tremendous base of working in communities of color and working with students of color, as does Century, obviously growing. And so I think that combination of the access point, that combination of the tailored, customized support services, combined with really employer-driven needs and really listening to the employer, which I know has been a big debate for a long time in workforce circles, I think is part of what is critical here. So 4 points I want to leave you with. One, we need to deliver a product and a productive worker that the employer values. If we don't do that, this will not be successful and ultimately we won't get paid. And so I love the accountability and the directness between delivering a product that employer needs and desires. I think the model needs to be employer-driven. Secondly, kudos to Hennepin County for recognizing this. Other governmental entities, I think, need to very much do the same. Again, I was sitting on top of one not too long ago, and it's a big challenge, but you have to get there because, again, think about it, 2020 is only 6 years away, which is a blink of an eye in terms of an organization's lifespan. 3, as I said before, these are good jobs. These are jobs that have an opportunity to move up. These are stable jobs and very much valuable. Fourth, community partners are critical. PPL, community colleges, again, so many of you in the room who do this kind of work. So I will stop there and turn it over to Will McKinney.